Hello, look at this wall. It is Cyclopean for sure, built with a combination of odd-shaped stones cut to fit one to another. Well, cutting is not the proper way. These stones were puzzled here before proper iron tools were available and had to be polished into their twisted form. Despite the impressive amount of effort put into building these walls, this is not a unique case. There is a global mystery with plenty of similar works all over Europe and also in America and Asia that we are yet to find what caused them. However, since these odd stones are arguably the oldest of the lot, maybe this place is where it all started. Today's wall is in Armenia. To be correct, it is not just one wall, but a bunch of them scattered in a region. Also, it is not properly in Armenia, but in the Armenian Plateau, a landmass extending over to nowadays Georgia, Turkey, and Azerbaijan. Also, these new countries do not get along, and for that they are always messing up what was there to be known about the past. Also, that past was such a long time ago, like 4,000 years, that we know close to nothing about back when. Four alsos, the places have such crazy names I cannot even distinguish, let alone pronounce. Five alsos, the walls have many applications, from wide circuits around the hill as in a fortress, extending into pedestals or impractical towers, all featuring a similar Cyclopean style of the rough type. Therefore, for all those alsos, all these walls will be visited upon as just one, as a team of sorts. The local languages, both Georgian and Armenian, are quite insular, with little relation to other talking points in the continent. Furthermore, the locals were not fans of letters. The Armenian language was only first written in 500 AD, and despite having access to proper font types like the Times Old Roman, they came up with the strangest symbols. The good thing is that when spoken, the odd-shaped letters used to describe the old walls sound like Cyclopean, and I think it has a nice ring into it. Furthermore, there are plenty of myths in the region with local creatures called Devi, Komble, or Garwar that often have just one eye and are brutish, in a similar way to how other jealous people would describe the builders of these magnificent walls. What is not a myth is that these walls are said to be from the deep in the Bronze Age, starting around 2200 BC, making them arguably some of the oldest Cyclopean walls in the whole world, which is a good starting point to understand where these things originate. The lands of the Armenian plateau have been continuously inhabited for a long time. So much so, this is a land of firsts. The world first shoe and the world first wine vessel were found around here in old caves. Not mixed together, I hope. Never mind the caves. What concerns us is that, despite the continuous inhabitation, in the early Bronze Age, when the walls were first built, there is sort of a gap. Not in the sense of a disaster, because, truth be told, the region has been very mild on the transitions, but more like a blank in understanding. To better explain this, I hope, let's do a reverse timeline. Right now, Armenia is home to an exotic population that is, at the same time, different and similar to the rest of the West. They are Indo-European speakers, like most of Europe and India. They are Christian since Roman times, having been the first ones to adopt the new religion. Before the Armenians and the Romans, the sites were occupied by the Urartian around 800 BC, again a unique and strangely familiar group, fitting with the local Iron Age vibe, as they had writing and fancied carving people with tall hats, walking like an Egyptian. Riding like an Egyptian, the people living in this area from 1500 to 1000 BC had cars, like in the New Kingdom, Egyptian and the Hittite. If the later Bronze Age was a highway, the local Armenian dudes were the original petrol heads, with the oldest wagon to be found in one of their cities. Continuing driving backwards, there is a period of 500 years starting around 2200 BC where we don't really know much about who was living in the area. And guess what? That's when a bunch of interesting things were built, including, yes, the first odd blocks of Cyclopean walls. That's always a banger. But also the not so little dongs of Metsamor, modestly called dragon stones, and this Karnak style of stone arrangement, parading many of what is now known as Noah's anchors. Noah is a recurrent figure in Armenian folklore because, as the story goes, around 2500 BC, according to the good book estimates, the animal ark landed here in the slopes of Mount Ararat. Since the early Cyclopean walls and those other strange stone things like the anchors began to be built in this region not much later on, maybe the two events are combined, with a flood wiping out whatever was old and a new trend emerging in the shape of odd-shaped stones. However, there is no support for this hypothesis. For one, because floods, scary as they are too frequent for comfort. Just in the Mediterranean, we have clear evidence of the waters bursting out in the following times. The Carmel Coast tsunami in 7900 BC, with waves reaching up to 5 kilometers inland, submerging off the Pantelleria Vecchia bank around 7300 BC, cutting the land bridge to Africa. Black Sea flooding in 6800 BC, surprisingly flooding the lands under the Black Sea. That time when Mount Etna collapsed in 6300 BC, making Pompeii look like a family barbecue. The Burkle crater around 4000 BC, a meteorite blast that nearly caused an extinction event. Or the Terra Santorini eruption from 1600 BC that smashed the Minoans into pieces. Each one of them was real and violent, enough to write big myths with pairs of animals gathered in a barge, or circular political societies being flooded. However, none of them fits with the biblical calendar, and even if it did, no way it would reach out to Mount Ararat, since the Armenian plateau is on average nearly 2000 meters above sea level, which makes it a very unlikely place to arrive by boat. Worse still, and true, I should have started with this fact. The 23rd century BC, that's when the Cyclopean walls first appear, had no floods. Quite the contrary, it was the driest century on record, leading us to search for more grounded explanations as to the origins of those fantastic walls. Let's make a quick pause to welcome our new friend that is joining us today for the first time. Yes, you, there's no one else over there. If you look down in the comments, you will find really smart people that can teach you a lot. But in the meantime, you'll have to listen to me yapping about this crazy idea. Imagine that all the Cyclopean walls to be found across Europe in so many places from Portugal to Armenia were not a spontaneous coincidence, appearing out of nothing as the mainstream defense, but a proper culture, or better said, a family of cultures, with some similar characteristics that we can identify and even make silly videos about. So let's put the missing people of the Armenian plateau to the great Cyclopean test, checking how much they have in common with other related cultures. 1. The odd-shaped stones puzzled in walls. Yes, that's for sure. 2. A strange language. A tiny bit up north, Georgian Kartvelian is a strong candidate, so yes. 3. No writing. Check. The aversion to letters is strong on these ones. 4. An animistic religion with a fetish for bulls or dicks, or both. Well, they do have the dragon stones, so one more check. 5. Non-elitist or tribalistic society. It's complicated. By the late Bronze Age, the equalitarian vibe was lost, but not only here, so mixed results. 6. Reburial and a preference for excarnation. Although up in the Caucasus Mountains there are great cases for that, it does not seem the trend reached as far south. 7. Pedestals, not defensive structures. There's one that I know of, but not enough for a proper yes. Stopping here with the test and being reasonable, the fact is that the Cyclopean builders in the Armenian plateau are not perfect at following that checklist. Still, they are not so far off either, right? Confused yet? This is not Confuse a Cat Limited. You can manage. Let's look again at the timeline. The before Cyclopean era was easily recognizable by the big bouldery stuff, the dolmens, menhirs, and monstrous clocks, impossible to set for daylight saving time. There is enough consistency in the megaliths to consider they were related, the Caucasus with Thracia, Thracia with the Mediterranean islands, the islands with the Iberian Peninsula, Iberia with Brittany, and Brittany with the British Islands. All had their compulsive phase of moving big stones around, and all quit the habit before the 23rd century BC, so that later on some of them caught up the new trend of stone puzzles. Whilst in Armenia a curious case emerges. The land has no proper megalithic Neolithic stuff, no very old big bouldery constructs like the ones we get north in the Caucasus Mountains, except for the big dick dragon stones and the Noah's anchors, with those arriving here quite late and mixed with early Cyclopean walls, making for this unique case of megalithic people living in the middle of Cyclopean structures, or vice versa, that if it does not scream origin, it is at least original. Here's the thing. The Armenian Plateau is the only place where we can see a clear cohabitation of the megalithic culture, the big boulders, with the Cyclopean works, the stone puzzles. Even more curious, there is no precedent. The megalithic stuff, very old elsewhere, appears for the first time on the Armenian lands. Quite late, more or less at the same time when the first Cyclopean walls are developed. Thus, if this transition from the megalithic to the Cyclopean had to happen somehow, somewhere, it makes sense it began in the place featuring the two at the same time, that is, Armenia. Whilst everywhere, for the one to disappear and another to emerge, for the Cyclopean to replace the megalithic, some sort of traumatic event may have been necessary, with the land revealing not a flood but the harshest dry spell ever recorded, as we'll see next. That's it for today. Hope you liked it. Drop an eye in the comments.